Good afternoon. This is Ryan Rippey, the Customer Enablement Manager here at KaiNexus. I'm joined by our CEO and co-founder, Greg Jacobson. Greg, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Hello, everyone.
We are reporting to you live from the KaiNexus HQ in Austin, Texas for our 2018 Q1 Releases webinar.
May I add that's the world headquarters?
The world headquarters,
okay.
Exactly. So for anyone tuning in for the first time, what we'll be going through today is the previous 4 releases for the first quarter here of 2018. We'll do a deep dive into some of the features and product enhancements that have been introduced. Greg, we have quite a bit on the agenda today. So
we have been really busy in prepping for this. I was blown away by the quality and the content, if I don't mind my saying, of these 4 releases, so we should just jump right in.
Yeah, our developers have been hard at work. Our customers have seen some really awesome features that have made their lives much easier. So let's dive right into it. If you'll take a look at my screen, I have a Freestyle card here titled Agenda, and we're going to start off with our 2.2.4 release back in January 26th of this year. So I want to start off, Greg, this was really a huge feature that we introduced that really reshaped the navigation use of KaiNexus was our filter refactor and unification.
So the way we had built the initial filter inherently had some limitations as to the kind of filtering that we were getting back from our customers. And so really to give them the combinations and the exact experience they wanted, we had to really just kind of completely knock it down. So what are we looking at here?
So this is an example. I've gone in and created an item list on a board here. So we would of course want to go ahead and title this, and then now within this rules section, and oh my gosh, Greg, like I'm just thinking back to what the filter screen used to look like. This has become so powerful. We now have the ability to match all or any of the following rules. And so the first step is to come in, choose a criteria. We have all of those common use cases such as the workflow. This could be, for example, a project improvement task. You can have the specific type. You can filter this down by user. Let's say you wanted to do is any, is all of, is not any of, is not all of. We can choose a specific user. Maybe it's our current user. Maybe it's another user in the system. And then we can just continue to really get as granular or as broad as we want with this, right? If we wanted to say I wanted everything for a current user and anything that I was responsible for, and then add in another criteria where we can do anything like location, maybe statuses in the system. We can include resolution options, maybe a bottleneck, some dates, attributes. So the endless opportunities and possibilities of filtering down, we've really enhanced and made this filtering option in KaiNexus as powerful as it can be.
If you have been inhibited or haven't been able to get the exact filter combination in the past and you haven't visited the new filter, please do so, because the chances are we'll be able to do that now.
Awesome. So moving right along, the next thing I want to point out from that 2.2.4 release was our board location filter. So now you have the ability on a board. Let's go ahead and hit the ellipses here and edit this board. There's an option to show location filter. So if I go ahead and select this, I can include a default location on my board if I wanted to. I can go ahead and save, and what this is going to do is pop out this network that we see here on the side, where this has been used a lot with managers, particularly for our customers. This is allowing you to come in and let's say you have a board such as this that you want to dive into a specific location. And what will happen is, if, for example, I wanted to take a look at maybe business systems, I'll go ahead and select that. I can select small health system, and we'll see that over here, for example, this improvements card is now updating based off of any of the items that are currently falling under the category that we have here, as well as the specific network location that I've added.
So this is essentially adding a filter on top of all of the existing filters. This becomes powerful when you have multiple cards on a board and you want to switch locations really quickly. Before, you would have to go into every single card and change that filter. Now, with the ability to toss this filter, this locations filter on the side here of a board, you can quickly change between locations. This is really powerful for leaders and CI professionals that are watching and needing to kind of oversee a bunch of different locations.
Exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse this for us. Let's take a look at, Greg, we introduced attribute reporting in 2.2.4. And if I scroll down here, we see an example of this pie chart attribute report that I've actually added as a card on this board. But to do a deeper dive, let's go over to our reports section. And now we'll notice there is a section for attributes. So if I come in and maybe we want to take a look at an attribute summary here, we can come in. Let's go ahead and get all of our attributes displayed here. Now what this is showing us is first we have some different graphs available that we can take a look at. We can look at this as a horizontal bar, vertical bar. We can take a look at the pie chart we just showed an example of, as well as our Pareto. And from the little attribute drop down here, I can actually come in and maybe select a particular attribute that I'm looking for. Let's say it was priority, and it'll display those different values that are in the system that have been selected for that attribute value. So here's an example that I had on that board. These are the different values that have been selected in the system for that priority attribute. I can hover over these, actually click in and see, for example, medium, and show all of those particular items in the system that have that medium attribute selected. So this is a really awesome new report that's available. You can come in and again use the location option to drill down. You can use some of those advanced filters that we just went over. Really powerful and useful use cases for our attribute reports.
And I think one of the coolest features is we added Pareto functionality right in here. So if you're tracking incidences or defects in some way and you're using the attribute to log which kind it is, you can automatically flip that into Pareto view. And even more powerfully, we've allowed these attribute reportings to be a card on a board. So you can really kind of optimize that workflow.
So in addition to the attribute summary, just quickly, we can take a look. There's an attribute impact report as well, where you'll be able to come in and take a look at all of those attributes, the specific values selected, how many have been completed in the system, percentage of change, and then all of those impact types, right? Whether it's falling into equality, safety, satisfaction. And in addition to our attribute impact, there's also our attribute activity, where we'd be able to come in, take a look at all of those attributes, how many total in the system, percentage of those, as well as our status bar here. So seeing all those items, what status they're in, and what attribute is tied back to them.
Attributes allow you to categorize and tag. That's the best way to think of it. So this has basically made our entire attribute framework just more powerful.
All right, jumping back to our board here. So now let's move on to, we've added the ability to attach an image to a Freestyle card, Greg. So if I go ahead and create, let's add a Freestyle card. You'll notice that there is a file section. You can also drag and drop if you had an image that was on your computer. So here we'd be able to add a specific value. Maybe we have this fishbone diagram that I want to display on my board. And this is beyond just images, Greg. I mean, if you want to create a card with kind of standard work and maybe have a Word, Excel, or PowerPoint documents that are going to be displayed on that card, you can also include those files as well.
Frequently used templates, or PowerPoints or Word docs. This is a great way to kind of put those front and center.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen a lot of our customers utilize the image functionality, add a little bit of branding, maybe on a welcome board, and be able to see their logo and just make things colorful and engaging in the system.
So you used to be able to do this in KaiNexus, but you had to host the image somewhere else. That was a little tricky for people, and we kept getting that feedback. Hey, I'd like to be able to put an image on a card, on a Freestyle card, and we would say, oh, well, you can't do that. This is how you do it. And that was ultimately a little bit too difficult, and so we kind of allowed that to be done right in the card. I think it's a infinitely better experience.
Awesome. So Greg, I just want to highlight the custom layout phase 3 that we did. We have a custom layout template that I've set up for us. Really, there's been so many features that we've added to this custom layout design in KaiNexus. We won't go over every single one in detail, but just for our customers out there who have yet to take advantage or to experiment with that custom layout, we just want to point out that it is available in KaiNexus. If you have an A3 and want to see kind of how that's going to look in KaiNexus, be able to print that out, this is an option for you. And the more people that are going to use this, the more feedback we'll get to continue to make this experience better.
So at our 2017 user conference, we first released the first version of custom layout. And custom layout really allows you to build your template to have whatever kind of layout you want. So for instance, we have a kind of a 2-column layout here and a compact title area here. And this is the third version or third phase of improvements. We released that first one at the user conference, and this is, we got tons of feedback from you guys, did a phase 1, a phase 2. This is the third phase of it. So there really is, I mean, there might be a dozen small enhancements to this. The point is if you haven't explored custom layout, or if you did explore custom layout but it wasn't able to do exactly what you wanted, re-engage with your CE team, because the chance that we can do it is probably high now. And just to explain the problem that we're trying to solve in general, it's our customers were giving feedback that they wanted either the screen to look like their old Excel and Word-based forms, or they just wanted information laid out in a slightly different way. So that's why we branched off into this domain. And really, probably the majority of the new templates that we're creating for customers are now being done in custom layout mode. So it's really powerful from an adoption standpoint, as well as from kind of organizing your mind and your thoughts as well.
Right, you are. So moving on, let's go ahead and jump into 2.2.5. This was a huge release for us, Greg, back in the end of February. One of the things that I'll have to point out, our developers were really big on this, changes the height of a card by drag and drop. So now we have the ability to come into a card, and if you just hover over, for example, the bottom here, I can go ahead and actually adjust that height with just the click and drag of my button.
If you have permission to change the board.
Exactly, yes.
And if you do, this is truly a game changer. We almost contemplated changing from 2.0 to 3.0 just based on this. We say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but really it does make creating the layout of your board much easier.
So next on our list here, combine and unify lists. So one of the things that for our KaiNexus seasoned vets, you'll notice now on the advanced toolbar, you no longer have the option for projects, improvements, or tasks. You also, when you're creating a card on a board, you don't have those specific project lists or improvement lists. Everything now is centralized within this list section, where if we were to come into lists, the kind of first option we can take a look at is it anything that's going to be mine, my organization, my location, any sort of custom lists I've built out for myself. On that next level, this is where you can dive a little bit deeper, maybe look for some sort of item that's been flagged. Maybe it's in a specific status. You're looking for a specific team member. And then really this third level is what has changed. And now you can actually drill down into the specific workflow. So maybe it's a project improvement or task, or be able to create a list that's going to have multiple workflows included within there.
It's part of a greater and larger effort that we've been working on for probably well over a year, where initially workflows were far more different, and as time has gone on, from the feedback you guys have given us, we've made those different workflows. So things like projects, improvements, and tasks, those are the three main workflows. We've now added workflows like chart, for instance, and incident. But we've been unifying not only the terminology, but also the date, as well as the team terminology, and then a lot of the functionality as well has started to become unified. And in this kind of recognition that people use lists less and less, we wanted it to really take up less real estate. And this was combined with the fact that people, when they do make lists, like those lists to show everything. They want to see the nested tasks. They want to see the nested improvements in the project. They want that to be a unified experience. So now throughout lists, as well as list view, as well as a tree view, as well as Gantt view, all those things can be mixed. And it creates a more powerful experience.
Exactly, yes. It's definitely was that second pass after the filter refactor to then go in and unify that list. That's just made the platform so much more advanced.
Configurable.
And configurable, exactly. So the next thing I see here, Greg, is the status and team on create. So if we were to go in and create, let's say, a project from our create dropdown, Now we can actually build out our status and team directly from this create screen.
If you have permissions to do that.
Exactly, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. So we're taking a look here at this project. We'll see by default, this is in a new status. If I wanted to plan this, I can go through and either decide to start this later, a specific date, maybe add a dependency. If I want this to start today and have it under an active status, we can change that status here, and then also in turn build out our team, put together any sort of, for this project, any leaders, participants, followers, and then go ahead and create this and have it automatically move into that particular status.
And the why here, if it's not obvious, looking at it was before this feature, you had to first create something, then you had to go back into it and put it in the status. So it was really a two-step process. By embedding it all right here, we've taken one of the steps out of the equation. So in many ways, this was a way to decrease waste, taking out steps, which some could argue would be non-value. And then it also helped unify some of the other screens where you could somehow, create certain states with certain people assigned if you went about it some ways, but not others. Now that whole experience is just more unified.
All right, so we took a big pass at the escalation revamp. So if I take a look at one of our improvements that we have here in this improvements card, let's jump in. And if you have the ability to go ahead and escalate an item, if I come over to the ellipses icon and select that escalate option, what we've done is we've essentially come in and redesign how this process is going to work. So originally, it would notify those people who had the notifications set up, who maybe had gone in and assigned that out, or whatever that may be. What we've done here now is we've made it so that we can make sure that the right eyes are on this particular improvement, for example. So we can come in, we can give our reason for escalation, right? And now we have the option, and this can be configurable, whether this transfer option is selected beforehand for you, whether it's available for you to choose or not. And by selecting this, you also can choose a specific location. And this can all be done by your admins on the back end as well. We can set it up so that a particular improvement type will be escalated to a specific location. So really a lot of possibilities with this escalate option.
So if you think about the initial escalation paradigm that we were trying to solve is, for instance, let's say I'm an ER doctor and I'm working in an emergency department and I've made an observation about something, and no one commented on the observation, or it got stagnant and we couldn't get past a barrier. You would allow people to kind of hit the red button, if you will, and draw attention within the same location about the improvement. And that worked, I would say, probably about 25% of the time. Most of the time, people thought escalation meant you took it up a level, and it actually kind of got bumped up the chain, if you will. And so to help kind of create the experience that people were looking for, and to make that configurable by organization, we created the ability to, one, transfer it at the same time. We also created the ability on the back end, if you wanted to error-proof that and made it standard, that it always transfers or never transfers. There's a couple different levers we can now pull on the back end. So if escalation didn't make sense to you in the past and didn't do what you would have hoped it would do, I'd revisit that now, because the chances are we're going to be able to model the workflow you were expecting.
Exactly. So let's talk about charts, Greg. One of the huge features that we added with charts was the ability to copy charts, which was something that our customers were begging for. If we take a look, let's come back to our list here, and we can take a look at a pretty chart that I have laid out for us. If we wanted to come in and make a quick copy of this chart, usually what you'd have to do is rebuild it. But now with this workflow, with making this universal between projects, improvements, tasks, if you come over to the ellipses, you can now come over here and actually copy that chart, which is so crucial and a really clutch feature for us. Now, speaking of charts, Greg, we've also gone in and kind of put the chart navigation in place. And what I mean by that is, if we were to create a chart, so now a chart is a workflow, and let's say we were going to create maybe a bar line graph here. Once we come in and enter our required fields and create that chart, we've kind of set it up with what I like to say on my trainings is follow the blue. So coming into the chart, we are prompted to add some data. So if I click the add data, we'll then see to create a series. So let's say we had our test series that we were using here. We can go ahead and enter all of our information on our new series page here, save, and then the next is add row. So if I'm just following that blue, this is going to help me put together this particular chart and then be able to enter my data and go ahead and save this. And so just really to make that flow within charts much smoother so people know exactly what to follow and where to go to populate this. That was a really big deal on charts.
And this came from watching customers and end users actually use the platform, and we realized that once you created a chart, sometimes people were at a loss of, well, what do I need to do next? And so blue is often the color that we use to highlight, well, what's the next status? What do I need to assign something? Do I need to activate it? Do I need to complete it? You'll notice that blue being used, and so we use that concept and kind of allowed you to follow the blue breadcrumbs, if you will, in order to kind of create and build that chart. You also notice that right at the chart create, you identify, oh, am I creating a line or a bar chart? Am I creating a Pareto chart? Am I creating a bowling chart? And it just helps kind of guide. Once we know what kind of chart you're trying to create, it helps us guide you through that process a little bit easier.
Greg, I want to talk about subscriptions. This was a new feature that we've added in specifically for boards. Now we can come in and
before you show the how, I want to give the why on this one.
Sure.
Because we were getting a lot of feedback that we need to draw typically leaders into a certain workflow or into a certain dashboard, and we're struggling with that. So now you have the ability to subscribe to a board, and what that will do is a day interval that of your choosing, you can elect to have an email get generated to that user's account that will give them a link that will take them right into a board that you want them to look at. So for example, I don't know why you would, but let's say you wanted a leader to every Monday see this board.
This is a nice board.
It's a nice board, but it's a one and done kind of board. and then you could go in and Ryan will show you how exactly you can start a subscription process to that board.
So yes, as a user, I can come into those boards I have access to, subscribe to the board, as Greg mentioned, to get that email to come in and take a look at that board. For any of our board admins, if you come in and edit boards, you'll be able to scroll down to this subscribers option, add a location, add a specific person, add a role, have those people specifically getting those subscriptions. And then what's really nice, and this kind of ties into our managing of subscriptions, if you come into your user profile and go into the ellipses and select your notification preferences, this section for email settings is where you'll be able to come in. As everyone knows, you can manage those specific digest days. Now you can also come in and manage those list or board subscriptions. And you can even go a level further and determine what time and in what time zone you want to get those emails, as well as if you need to take email off at any point.
These are all permission based. So if you have certain kinds of permissions, you could change other people's. Otherwise, you're really only able to change yourself. And that email on and off is a way, for example, you were going to do a workout and you had a group of, 30 people that were going to be in the workout. And over a couple day period, there was going to be a lot of activity in KaiNexus, and you wanted to limit emails, for instance, during that period. This would be a way where you could do a bulk change and turn those 20 people's emails off for a period of time so they don't get bombarded. Wouldn't change things like whether they can reset their passwords or activation emails, but it would kind of limit those. So a whole bunch of features actually that Ryan went through here as a unified kind of experience, but there's actually about 6 different features that we're looking at here. And as we become more and more global, we have companies now using our system really around the world, and some companies that are international within themselves. You can just determine what time zone you want those things delivered at. So.
All right, so let's move into 2.2.6. The first enhancement that we introduced was a card tooltip displaying those particular filter rules. So after we went in and did our filter refactor, we wanted to understand exactly why things were showing on a particular card. So if I hover over this improvements card here, we can see those particular filters. It's the workflow of an improvement, a specific type. This is actually showing me anything planned, overdue, or active, and the users, Greg, of course, I went and chose us. So anything that we are currently working on in the system.
And before you move on from here, what I think is interesting here is that you can kind of see a little bit of our cadence on development. So things that were released in .4, by the time .4 is released, our development team's already knee deep into developing .5. But we got immediate feedback on the .4, and you can see we've already kind of responded to that feedback in .6. So for instance, we did the filter refactor and unification, and in .6, the feedback was, hey, I want a really quick way to look at my filter, and so we built this hover over on a title of a card to quickly see what are the rules being applied to create this filter. And you can see, for example, the status and team on create was in .5, and we're going to get to .7 where we got some feedback from some of our customers that they wanted that to work a little differently. So I'm fanatical about making sure our team is just driven to getting feedback. We live on the feedback that we're getting from you guys, because we are actually developing the system for ourselves because we use it. But the reality is we're really not developing the system for us. We're developing it for our customers.
So in addition to that, another feature in 2.2.6, Greg, opt-in notifications for specific ID templates. So if I come back to my user profile, let's jump back into that notification screen under the ellipses here. Let's say I wanted to add a new notification preference. Originally, you'd be able to determine that specific type, so that workflow, whether it's a project, improvement, or task. And now we can take it a step further, where if I choose improvement, for example, here, I can now in this all section choose any of those specific improvement type templates that I have in the system. And you can speak more to the use case behind this, Greg, but what I've seen in trainings is there's going to be particular items that when they're submitted in the system, or when they go into an overdue status, or they're submitted for resolution, that a particular department or a manager is going to be responsible for taking action.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of two right off the bat. For one, before I get into the two examples, the way people are using KaiNexus today, we simply could not have predicted 2 and 3 years ago, let alone 6, 7, 8 years ago. It's vastly different, and with that has created completely new workflows and use cases. For instance, some people are using KaiNexus for maintenance requests, and if you have a person that's kind of on top of maintenance, they can now subscribe just to maintenance requests and get that in their workflow. Another scenario might be a PI expert that is in charge of overseeing all A3s that go on in an organization or in a company. Well, they don't need to be kind of bombarded with the just do it's. Let the just do it's just flow through. Maybe they get notified on just do it's if they have an impact that's over $1,000 or it's safety or something along those lines. They don't want to know about all of them, but they do want to know about A3s. I mean, A3s can be a little bit larger time investment for an organization to do a proper A3. So now you can do that with this scenario.
Yep. All right. Moving back to our board here. So the next thing I want to take a look at, we've added new attribute types for people and location. And Greg, I've gone ahead and configured these on one of our templates here. Let's take a look at an improvement. And as I scroll down, we'll see these new attribute options for location, which will be any of the particular network locations that you have in KaiNexus.
So this is pre-populated. Literally, when this template was configured for location, all of the locations of this organization showed up here. It didn't require going in and adding these.
Exactly, and the same goes for our person attribute, right? So if I want to come in from this drop down, this will be any of those KaiNexus users that are currently in the system.
And that are kind of authorized to use the system, if you will. So people that are frontline or full access or incident or offline. So people that wouldn't show up here are people like inactive users or setup users. So those are an example of kind of how people are using. So for example, a location, you might want to choose the location of where a Gemba walk happened. That could be a great use case here. And maybe for a person, you might want to identify maybe the person who got a certification or
The use case I've seen, Greg, is for example, if there was maybe a manager that didn't have that you wanted to address but wasn't going to actually be on the team,
right,
then you'd be able to grab them here and include them in that person.
Maybe it's an employee safety incident and you want to specify which employee was involved with this incident. So there's some features that I know exactly how things are going to use, and there's some features that just don't know exactly how they're going to be used, and I think that's one of them.
Greg, I want to be mindful of time. We have a few more here that I want to go over. The next is Unify and Enhance Color Picker. So this is something that we introduced over in the admin section. As admin users, if you want to come into underneath System in our General section, we've now added this colors option. So essentially what you'd be able to do is come in and configure your organization colors, be able to work with your marketing team, get those particular hex codes. By selecting this, we can then come in and add specific colors that will show up all throughout KaiNexus, right? So let's say, for example,
before you show those, what also you're seeing here is we picked some new and what I think are a much prettier default organization colors schema. Our default organization colors were kind of random prior to this release, and now we've gone through and just created a nice palette, if you will.
So if I wanted to come in and maybe take some of these out here, we can come in, select these particular organization colors. Let's say we want to restrict so that we can only use those org colors. I can go ahead and select this here. Now we have some unsaved changes, so let's go ahead and save these. Our success message is letting us know we're going to do a quick log out and log back in. And then once we've logged in, if we want to take a look at, for example, on our board we're looking at here, if I came into this improvements card, hit the little ellipses and mess with our layout, maybe this primary header color, I could come in, you'll see those particular colors that we saw on that general screen are being displayed for me to choose here. So
you can really force, now you can create your default color palette. You can also force people to use this default color palette or give them the option to pick any color they want. So Ryan actually, when he did the configuration there, he forced people to use the default colors, but you can also just keep that open and people can pick the exact color they want from kind of an infinite color picker.
Yes, essentially when you came in, you would see that there would be these options that we've selected, and you would still have that color wheel where you'd be able to choose any additional. All right, Greg, another huge thing with charts, the Excel importer for chart data. I've gone in here and created a chart for us to take a look at here. We're giving some props out here internally for KaiNexus and our employees. So I've gone in and I've built out this particular chart. So if I take a look at, let's edit the data here. We have our line graph, and so we have our category, we have our series here for props. What we can do now is from this drop down, I can go ahead and upload an Excel file. So I've gone ahead and let's grab a file that we have here called props, and I've mapped out my particular Excel file so that it will show up within these particular category and this particular prop series. So once our import is complete, we'll see everything's been populated here on this screen. And if I go ahead and save, we can actually, oh, so nice, I have a bar graph here taking a look at this particular data set.
I see you gave yourself the most props.
I gave myself some props. I just needed some props to get through.
Get it. I'm glad I came in third.
You were top 8.
There you go.
So this is another feature. Definitely get with your CE representative to get an in-depth walkthrough on setting this up. This becomes really crucial and much less manual and having to add specific data if you have that already in an Excel spreadsheet.
Right. Especially large data series.
Yes, definitely. So Greg, last couple here that we have for 2.2.7. So this was a recent release that just came out over the weekend. We talked about, kind of hinted at the customized status sort. So we noticed when we came into one of our other workflows, if I come into, let's say, this 5 Ys, what we can also do on the back end now is configure the default status that a particular item would be entered in as. So for example, here we chose active. By default, everything would come in as new, but now we can come in and say if it's going to be deferred, if it's going to be something planned. This was a specific use case one of our customers had where everything that they entered, they wanted to just have that one less step of having to worry about what that particular status was on the item. And last but not least, our default status when creating. So let's go ahead and jump back. As our admin users, if you come over to that general section, again, getting a lot of use out of this now, at the very bottom is this new status order option. And essentially what this means, Greg, is that I can come in, and we saw, for example, that improvements card that we're looking at. If I want to have my organization view all items in a different status order, let's say maybe I want all of my overdue items at top, maybe I want all of my active underneath those, anything planned underneath those, you can go ahead and actually update that here in this status order section. And then we can go ahead and save this and just do a quick sign out and sign back in. And so all of those particular cards within your organization, when you go in and take a look at your lists, it'll now default to that new status that you've added.
And keep in mind that does the sort order of lists. It will not do on your report area the bar graphs, the status bar graphs.
Yes, so in particular, you'll see it on any sort of these item cards that you have on a board, or as Greg mentioned, going into your list section.
So you might have noticed that .7 is a little anemic, if you will. That's because we have been actually developing .8. Most of our developers have actually been developing on .8 while .7 development was going on. So .8 is really going to be very big, and it's going to include some really very sought after features that we've been hearing about for quite some time. And I mean, I'm quite excited about it. So
I'm extremely excited for .8. A
which,
lot of
which
material.
we anticipate in the first half of May, in case people were wondering about that. I know we've blown through our time here, so we've completely stopped. Don't have any time for our Q&A. So please make sure if you have Q&A to reach out to Ryan or your CE lead there. But before we let you go, I do want to mention Mark and I's next Ask Us Anything. If you can believe it, we've actually done 18 of these episodes so far. It was an experiment, and the experiment hasn't stopped. Basically, if we have more questions that we haven't answered, we do another episode. And so far, we've done 18 of these, and more questions keep coming in, and they've actually become a lot of fun. They're very light, they're informal. We basically try to answer about 4 to 6 questions in-depthly, and I welcome you to come to that, eat lunch with us on April the 17th.
Greg, thank you so much for the time today. I will see you again in Q2, and I'm excited to see what those next releases are going to entail. This was a lot of really great features, and I'm happy we were able to highlight these with our customers today.
And like I always try to remind everybody, there's no better day than today to keep improving.
All right, keep improving, everyone. Take care.